With all the various aftermarket accessories available for Jeep and Eagle vehicles, why choose genuine Mopar accessories? Easy. Mopar accessories, unlike other aftermarket accessories, are designed for a certain application on specific Jeep and Eagle vehicles. Welcome to this month's VideoTec. In this program, we're going to look at some select accessories on Jeep and Eagle vehicles. These accessories offer advantages that no other aftermarket accessories can. For example, most electrical connectors plug right in for dependable installation. And all Mopar accessories are Chrysler engineering tested and approved for trouble-free life. Another plus for the customer is that when Mopar accessories are added to a new vehicle, the accessory is added on to the new car basic warranty if installed prior to delivery. Let's start our look at accessories with a few of those used on Jeep vehicles. The Jeep Wrangler rear overhead speaker system, or sound bar, mounts directly to the sport bar and connects to a factory-installed or Mopar-approved stereo radio. This new system puts the sound closer to the listeners, giving an increased stereo effect. As you can see here, there are few parts to the sound bar system, and the installation is fairly straightforward. Some drilling, however, is required. And remember, for this installation, as well as for any installations involving electrical equipment, disconnect the battery negative cable before beginning. The sound bar can be installed on both soft and hard top Wranglers, but in both cases, the tops will have to be removed before installation. The sound bar needs holes drilled in the sport bar here so that it can be fastened down with screws. After the sound bar is fastened to the sport bar, the wiring is then routed down the post. Feed the harness down the door lock pillar and along the floor pan till it's brought up the hinge panel. You'll want to make sure that you leave enough wire to reach the radio. Remove the radio from the instrument panel so you can attach the sound bar wiring. The 13-pin connector has to be removed from the back side of the radio, and 4 outer wires must be removed from the connector. The 2 outer wires on each side of the connector have to be removed. To prevent cross-wiring, install the new wires one by one right after removing the old wires. Replace the brown and white wire with the purple wire. Replace the green and white wire with the black wire. On the other side, replace the brown wire with the green wire, and replace the white and black wire with the black wire. Because wire colors may change from year to year and vehicle to vehicle, check the instructions before beginning installation. Be sure to cut the terminals off the wires that have been removed, and then double wires back and tape them in a bundle to prevent a possible short. Reconnect the 13-pin connector to the back of the radio and reinstall the radio to the instrument panel. At this point, all that remains to be done is to further secure the sound bar to the door opening rail. To do this, first apply the pressure-sensitive flap with adhesive backing to the sound bar mounting flanges. Before fastening the sound bar down, make sure the flanges fit properly by shaping them with a rubber mallet on the door opening rail. To avoid marring the finish, protect them with a covering, such as a piece of cardboard or carpet. Once the flanges have been tapped to fit the form of the door opening rail, the sound bar needs 2 more holes drilled here and screws inserted to completely fasten the sound bar down. Now that the sound bar is installed, reconnect the battery negative cable so you can test the speakers by turning on the radio and checking both the balance control and fader control. If there's a problem with speakers responding to the wrong control, the wires in the 13-pin connector will have to be checked for proper installation. Fog and driving lights are very popular accessories on sport utility vehicles like the Cherokee and Wrangler, So let's take a closer look at some aspects of their installation and operation. When installed and aimed according to the instructions provided with the kit, Mopar driving and fog lights meet federal safety standards. Since state and local regulations may also apply, you should contact your local regulatory or law enforcement agencies in your area before installing the lights. First, disconnect the battery negative cable. One of the preliminary steps in fog light installation is selecting a location for the light relay. The relay should be near the battery and use an existing screw if possible. When you are ready to mount the relay, plug it into the harness and make sure to mount it with the relay pointing down. Next, route and connect the relay wiring in the engine compartment, including the red fused wire, which must be routed to and installed under the positive battery clamp nut. Since this wire is connected directly to the battery, this circuit is 12 volts at all times, so you need to make sure that the wire will not short to ground. Once all the wires in the engine compartment are connected, route the yellow wire into the passenger compartment using an existing grommet. If a new hole has to be drilled, be sure to check hole location from the passenger compartment to prevent damage to existing wiring. Any holes will also have to be sealed up with Mopar sealant. Once the engine compartment wiring is done, move to the front of the vehicle where the lights need to be mounted. To make access to the wiring easier, remove the grille on Cherokee and Comanche. On some models of Cherokees and Comanches, mounting holes already exist on the bumper, covered by bumper plugs. Other models may require drilling. The Wrangler needs a special mounting bracket kit. When mounting fog lights, make sure the brand name or top is right side up. Once the lights have been mounted, connect the lights to the wiring and secure all excess wiring to the existing wiring with tie straps and clips. After the lights have been installed and wired, check to make sure that wiring does not contact any moving parts, sharp objects, or areas of extreme heat. Install the light switches next. To do this, remove the instrument panel bezel, along with all the existing switches. Now, apply the applique to the switch housing. Install the switches to the appropriate locations with the small indicator lamp at the top. Next, locate the instrument panel light socket and install the light bulb. Then, reconnect the wiring to the existing switch. Take the two-wire switch jumper and insert the previously routed yellow wire into the empty cavity on the switch connector. Now, mount the black ground wire to a suitable location. Next, locate the four-way headlight dimmer switch connector on the lower end of the steering column and disconnect it from the instrument panel harness. Extract the violet and white wire from the connector by depressing the locking tang of the terminal and replace it with the violet and white wire from the switch jumper. Slip a piece of shrink tubing over the terminal and down onto the wire previously removed from the four-way connector. Connect it to the pigtail terminal coming from the violet and white wire of the switch jumper. Slip the shrink tubing back over the terminals and apply heat. Be careful not to melt the shrink tubing. Once this is accomplished, reconnect the plug connector into the back of the lamp switch. And tuck away all excess wiring and secure it with tie straps. Now, reinstall the instrument panel bezel. And check the operation of the lights. Turn on the low beam headlights and then the fog lights. The indicator on the switch, as well as the fog lights themselves, should illuminate. Now, turn on the headlights on high beam the fog lights should turn off. If you had installed driving lights, the opposite should happen in both cases. If this doesn't happen, you'll have to go back and make sure everything is installed properly. If only one fog light comes on, you'll have to test the light to see where the fault lies. To perform the test, separate the non-working light connector. Measure the resistance across the bulb terminals. The meter should read close to 0 ohms. If the meter reads more than approximately 10 ohms, replace the bulb. Remember, when handling halogen bulbs, don't touch the glass directly with your hands. The oily residue from your skin will cause the bulb to fail when turned on. So handle it with a clean cloth instead. If you do touch the bulb, it should be cleaned with isopropyl or denatured alcohol. If the light bulb is good, check the wiring for an open circuit between the relay and the bulb, or for an open ground. If both fog lights are out, then you will need to conduct a different test. First, check the inline fuse located at the positive side of the battery. With the headlights and fog lights on and the dimmer switch in low, measure the voltage at the fog light relay connector terminal 1 by inserting the positive lead in the terminal and the negative lead to a suitable ground. If the meter doesn't read battery voltage, check the wiring from the battery, including the inline fuse. While still at the fog light relay connector, measure the voltage at terminal 2 and battery positive post. If the meter doesn't read battery voltage, check the wiring to ground. The voltage at the fog light relay connector terminal 5 and ground should be measured next. If the meter doesn't read battery voltage, check the wiring from the fog light switch. Next, measure the voltage at the fog light switch connector terminal B to ground. If the meter doesn't read battery voltage, check the wiring from the dimmer switch. Measure the voltage at the fog light switch connector terminal C to ground. If the meter doesn't read voltage, replace the switch. Finally, check terminal 4 of the fog light relay connector to ground. If the meter doesn't read battery voltage, replace the relay. This procedure is almost identical to the diagnosis for driving lights, although the dimmer switch must be in the high position. We've looked at the installation and some diagnosis of fog lights on a Cherokee. Installation of fog and driving lights on other Jeep vehicles will differ slightly, so be sure to consult your installation instructions and service manuals. A valuable addition to your accessory inventory is the new Mopar Sno-Way lightweight snowplow. The Mopar Sno-Way snowplow is designed for the suspension systems and fascias found on the Cherokee, Wagoneer, and Comanche. It fits years 1984 and on. The lighter weight of this system results from the tough Lexan blade, which weighs much less than standard steel blades. This unit also features a quick disconnect blade, hydraulics, and lights that, when removed, leave no dangling hardware as with conventional snowplow systems. The installation is straightforward and requires only a small amount of drilling to attach the plow's subframe. Remember, anytime you expose bare metal, especially on the underbody, don't forget to coat the metal with a Mopar-approved rust inhibitor to prevent corrosion. The grill guard goes on next. It bolts onto the vehicle with no drilling required. If the vehicle already has fog lights, then they will have to be removed and reinstalled after the grill guard is on. The snowplow headlights bolt right onto the grill guard. Electrical connections for the lights are mostly of the plug-in variety, requiring no splicing. The only exception is the side marker turn signal lamp wires that must be cut so that the snowplow light wiring may be spliced in. First, test which wire is the turn signal wire by activating the turn signal lever and noting the test light response. Once identified, cut the wire about 4 to 6 inches from the lamp socket. Then strip about 1/4 of an inch of insulation off both ends of each wire. Slide a piece of heat shrink tubing over the cut end of the wire coming from the turn signal lamp. Now, attach the SnowPlow harness wire to the vehicle turn signal wire coming from the vehicle main harness by twisting. Insert the twisted wires into the butt-end crimp-type connector and secure by using a crimping device. Insert the remaining wire coming from the turn signal lamp into the other end of the butt-end connector and crimp to secure. Finish the connection by applying heat to the heat shrink tubing. Again, be careful not to melt the tubing. Repeat this procedure for the side park lamp on the same side and also the turn signal and park lamp on the opposite side. Now, let's review some general practices to keep in mind when installing these and many other electrical components. When routing the wiring harness, be sure to keep it away from sharp edges and heat. Also, be sure to anchor the harness securely with tie straps. A good ground is also necessary for the proper operation of electrical equipment. To ensure the plow lights work properly, check to make sure that a good ground exists in the following places: where the grill guard attaches to the vehicle, where the SnowPlow headlight bracket attaches to the grill guard, and where the SnowPlow headlight attaches to the mounting brackets. Now the wiring that brings the power to the SnowPlow itself has to be installed. Route the small 4-prong connector into the quick disconnect bracket in the subframe and secure it, making sure that it's right side up. With the quick disconnect end mounted, route the other end of the harness up into the engine compartment. As we've mentioned, it is very important to make sure that it's kept clear of moving parts, sharp edges, and areas of extreme heat. Route the control box harness from the passenger compartment to the engine compartment. Also, as with the fog light wiring, it's best to use an existing hole. With the control box harness routed into the engine compartment and its connections made, secure the control box to the interior. Mount the box on the center drive tunnel or under the instrument panel. If mounted under the instrument panel, make sure the box does not get in the way of knees for safety reasons and also for when moving the seat. With the control box mounted, crimp a spade terminal on the end of the 16-gauge red tracer wire coming out of the control box harness. Now, go to the fuse box under the instrument panel on the driver's side. Find and remove the accessory fuse. It's usually a 10-amp fuse. After reconnecting the battery negative cable, insert a test light probe into the fuse panel and turn on the ignition simultaneously to see which side of the fuse is the fused side. Repeat this procedure for the other side of the fuse socket. The side that doesn't light the test light is the fused side. You'll need to disconnect the battery negative cable again, and then the ATO fuse tap must be installed to the fused side of the fuse socket. Install the female spade terminal on the red wire from the control box into the fuse tap. Reinstall the fuse to the fuse box at this point. The start solenoid switch must now be installed onto the battery side of the engine compartment. The switch should be mounted on the inner fender panel or inner wheel well within 2 feet of the battery, and the wires installed to it. Now that you've had a brief look at the major steps of the installation procedure, let's look at the quick disconnect feature of the Mopar Sno-Way SnowPlow. The first step in removing the SnowPlow is to drive to the SnowPlow storage location, preferably indoors. Making sure that no one is near the blade, straighten out the blade, and then lower it. The vehicle must then be put in park or neutral and the parking brake fully set. Turn the ignition switch off and then to the accessory position. To make it easier to disconnect the blade, put the control box toggle switch in the down position. To disconnect the plow itself, lift up the bell crank lift bar assembly. until the pin can be easily removed. Now, go to the quick disconnect plug and lift the cover on the vehicle end of the connector. This will unlock the SnowPlow end so that it can be removed. It's a good idea to tuck the plug away so that it won't be accidentally crushed. The only step that remains is to remove the pivot pins from both sides of the plow A-frame. And remove the plow. No dangling hardware remains, as with other plows. The Mopar Sno-Way snowplow is well engineered and designed for long life. That life, however, won't be as long as it could be if the plow isn't maintained properly. This includes checking and adding oil. Check the hydraulic oil by removing the 4 pump cover screws and then removing the cover. Remove the breather filter cap on the center top of the hydraulic power unit. The oil level should be 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch below the top of the filler hole. When adding oil, don't fill the reservoir to the top. This will cause the oil to overflow. Mopar recommends using only its cold climate oil in the snowplow. In addition to checking and adding oil, it's important to change the oil regularly to maintain peak performance. Consult the owner's manual for the maintenance schedule. These maintenance procedures should keep the Mopar Sno-Way snowplow in good working order for a long time. But if a problem develops, consult the owner's manual included in the kit for diagnostic procedures. To become a little more familiar with the troubleshooting system in the owner's manual, let's look at how to use the manual to solve a problem. Suppose the snowplow will raise, but once raised, it starts to creep down. First, consult the troubleshooting chart in the owner's manual to find the condition. After finding the problem on the chart, find the possible causes and do what is suggested in the corrective action column. The troubleshooting sections that the master chart refers you to provide a systematic method of tracking down the cause of a problem, so be sure to use them. Another popular accessory with a variety of uses is a trailer hitch. Mopar trailer hitches are specifically designed for ease of installation and quality of fit on Jeep vehicles. This is a receiver-type trailer hitch and its mounting hardware. This hitch is capable of towing much heavier loads than the lighter-duty ball mount hitches. It's important to match the correct hitch and vehicle equipment to the kind of loads that will be towed. So consult the vehicle's owner's manual before installation. While we're on the subject of recommended towing equipment, wide-angle door mirrors are also a good idea in most applications. For even more towing accessories, let's take a look at trailer wiring harnesses. The wiring harnesses used to power lights or brakes on a trailer being pulled by a Jeep vehicle come in 2 varieties. First is the 5-pin harness used on light-duty ball mount hitches. The 5-pin connector contains terminals for backup lamps, right turn and stop lamp, left turn and stop lamp, a combination tail side license plate lamp terminal, and a vehicle ground terminal. The other kind of harness is the factory optional 7-pin connector that is used on receiver-style hitches. It contains terminals for vehicle ground, optional electric trailer brakes, tail side license plate lamps, 12-volt battery output, left turn and stop lamp, right turn and stop lamp, and backup lamps. To install a 5-pin connector harness on the Cherokee, you'll have to gain access to the vehicle wiring harness that the trailer wiring harness must plug into. First, remove the inside-mounted spare tire, the tire support, and enough trim panel and scuff plate screws to get at the 8-way connector. To install the trailer harness, disconnect the 2 ends of the 8-way connector. Take the trailer harness that has 3 connectors and plug 2 of its connectors into the disconnected 8-way plugs. After the first trailer harness segment has been tucked away, route the second trailer harness up into the vehicle and connect the 2 together. You will now need to perform a check of the trailer harness connector. If power is not reaching the connector, it will be necessary to create a mini harness at the fuse panel. This mini harness will already exist if the vehicle is equipped with power locks and windows. If power is still not present at the connector, then go back and verify all the connections. Up next, we'll take a look at the EVS accessory on the Talon. The electronic vehicle security system on the Talon offers electrical connections that were designed for the vehicle, giving trouble-free life and making installation much easier. There are, however, still some tips for a smoother installation. Of course, reading and understanding the instructions before installation is very important. This includes the instructions for any EVS options to be installed with the main kit, such as pin switches and a hood lock. Now let's look at what kind of electrical connections you will have to make. Once you have located the connector that you need to tap into, separate both halves. Using a screwdriver, remove the lock wedge from the connector. To remove the wire, use a small screwdriver or terminal extracting tool and depress the locking tang inside the connector. The wire can now be pulled out and the EVS harness wire inserted. Replace the locking wedge at this point. The locking wedge can only be inserted properly after all the terminals are fully seated. The original connector can now be plugged back together. The wire that was removed from the original connector goes into the empty cavity in the EVS connector. To secure the wire, insert lock wedges into both halves of the EVS connector, and then plug the EVS connector together. These electrical connections produce an original equipment fit superior to that of other aftermarket systems. Now let's take a look at the places these connections will be made on the Talon. To hook up the power and dome light wire, you will need to locate the 6-way connector on the right side of the steering column. Gain access to the terminals by disconnecting the connectors. Following the wire removal and installation procedure we've already discussed, replace the existing yellow and red wire with the yellow and red wire from the EVS harness. Then replace the existing black and yellow wire with the black and yellow wire from the EVS harness. Take the disconnected yellow and red wire and insert it here in the EVS power harness connector. The disconnected black and yellow wire goes here. Now, mount the black ground wire to a suitable location. If you are installing the remote system, then the next connection will be at the relay panel, which is above and to the left of the steering column. Unplug the relay and replace the existing light blue and red wire with the red wire from the EVS door lock harness, the existing red and yellow wire with the red and yellow wire from the harness, and the existing light blue and black with the black wire from the harness. Take the disconnected light blue and red wire and insert it here in the EVS door lock connector. The disconnected light blue and black wire goes here. Insert the remaining disconnected wire, the red and yellow wire, here in the other EVS door lock connector. The next connector is for the ignition connection. This 6-way connector is located at the right of the steering column. Once the connector is separated, replace the existing black and white wire with the black and white wire from the EVS power harness. You will also need to replace the existing black and yellow wire with the black and yellow wire from the power harness for the starter interrupt feature, except when installing the passive system. If you are installing the passive system with the optional starter interrupt, then consult the instructions contained in the starter interrupt kit. The disconnected black and white wire goes here on the EVS power harness connector. If the black and yellow wire was disconnected, then it is inserted here. To connect the siren wiring, first route its wire through an existing grommet into the passenger compartment. Once the wires are inside, they can be inserted in the proper terminal in the accessory connector supplied with the kit. The orange wire goes here, and the red wire goes here. The wires from the monitor will have to be routed behind the instrument panel and down to the accessory connector. The black wire goes here, the red wire goes here. The light green wire goes here, the white goes here, and the gray wire goes here. If you have installed a disarm button as well, then insert the brown wires into these two cavities. Remember, when you're finished installing any Mopar accessories, always put the owner's manual and installation guide from the kit in the customer's glove box. This reference material can be invaluable to the customer, giving them the information to help keep that Mopar advantage. Well, that's about it for this month's VideoTec. See you next month.